Hi, everyone. Don Famularo here, and I am back. Listen, I am back like a bad rash after a while. I just keep coming back every Monday. Mapex All Access. This is live, and I've got with me the great Stephen. My gosh, I love the name, Maestro Robinson.
What's up, Dom? What's up, everybody? Glad to be here.
Welcome, Steve. Thank you so much. So I want to start by saying I love the Maestro part, the people that call you Maestro, because you really do, with all that you do, you really kind of, kind of culminate all of that, what a Maestro is, the connector to make it all happen and what's going on. So tell me the story about how that name stuck.
All right. Well, Maestro began when I was in high school. I was around 15, 14 or 15, and I was playing at my local church in Los Angeles County, and the pastor was the music director, and we were in a band rehearsal, and we weren't gelling very well, kind of going through some real kind of rough patches in this particular song, and we weren't making any progress. So he jumped in and he was like, "Okay, look, here's what we're gonna do. This is taking too long. We're gonna go from the verse to the chorus to the bridge, one last chorus, and then we're done. It's over. Maestro, count us off." So he was very sarcastic. That wasn't supposed to be like a nickname. He was just frustrated. But eventually he started calling me that more and more. It kind of caught on, and now the band's kind of calling me that. So I just adopted it as a regular nickname, and it's, I've reintroduced it into my career over the last, few years, and people seem to really dig it, so it stays.
I love it. I love it. When that happens, it happens very, very naturally, and it fits. So you've got, on your Instagram, right? It's also, you've got Maestro in there too. So I want people to acknowledge the fact that that's a part of the brand that you put together, which I think is so smart. And we'll talk about that, how we can brand ourselves better, because that's I get a lot of questions like that about how do I develop my career, and you've done that. You've branded yourself in that way. So it's really, really fantastic. But I want to start by saying, I love your playing. Let's go back to the beginning stages of what got you involved in playing music and specifically drums.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, like most drummers in the African American community, we all kind of started playing in church. That was my story as well. My dad is a former pastor, so I'm a PK, and my mom was and still is a praise and worship leader. So that's her ministry. So, excuse me, there was gospel all in the house. I was in church almost every day of the week, just because that was the culture that we lived in. I grew up Pentecostal and apostolic. That was sort of our umbrella as far as Christianity. Right. And just church. That's how it started. But I knew I wanted to do a little more than that. I wanted to be more than just a gospel drummer. So I really looked up to the guys who had transferred and sort of taken their gospel roots and church drumming, and they turned that into a career in pop and in R&B. And that really hit me hard once I started to hit like 12 or 13. And then that was my goal ever since then. But it definitely started in church.
So how old were you when you started playing in church?
That's a tricky question because my parents tell me I started playing at age 2. And I definitely was not playing in church at age 2, but they said the rhythm was developed, and they noticed that I can clap on beat, and rhythm was there at age 2. But you can't just jump on the drums and start playing in church, Dom. Like there's so many there's a waiting period. And I'm sure you've heard stories about guys growing up in church, and if you're not really cutting it and you can't keep up with the service flow, they kick you off and somebody else gets on.
Exactly right.
So it took a little while before I was actually playing a full service by myself. But those beginning ages, 5 or 4, 5, 6, they would give me like one song, and it was usually a song that wasn't very important to the service. It was kind of a flowy song, nothing too crazy. And then eventually, as you get better and you start paying more of your dues, then you start, getting more of okay, you're playing the whole service.
So did you have drum set at home? Did you get a drum kit at home where you were kind of playing at home?
I did. Well, I started on pots and pans. and phone books and couches.
Yeah.
My parents didn't want to invest in a full kit because they didn't know if this was something I really, really wanted to do or if it was just a phase. So it came in increments. I had they gave me a little toy kit first that I completely demolished. Then the drummer who actually played at our local church, he had an extra floor tom that he never used. And I think it was like a 16-inch floor tom. And he's like, I don't use this tom, Stephen can have it. So I had a floor tom, and that, it went from toy kit to real floor tom. But I didn't get my first kit, Dom, until I was like 9, to be honest. My dad got me a kit. It was a birthday and Christmas gift when I turned, I think I was 9. Yeah, 9 years old. And the kit was a Trixon Speedfire 1000. Like, man. Yeah, and it cost $500. It was a 5-piece, 12, 13, 16, 22. Not an expensive kit, not a great sounding kit, very, very much elementary. But it was $500, and he said, we'll do $250. We'll put it on layaway. We'll do $250 for your birthday, and we'll do $250 for Christmas, and you'll have the kit for Christmas.
Boy, so you get this kit, you're playing it now. So were there any bands that you were listening to at that time?
Man, it was really all gospel, man, because that was the only music that I knew. I wasn't introduced to pop and other genres until I started going to elementary school, and the other kids would bring their CDs to school. This was in the big CD Walkman, era. And, you were a cool kid if you had like the giant, suitcase of CDs with different genres and everything. So all I knew was church. So that was all I really practiced to. And I credit my parents to that because to me, if I didn't sound like Jeff Davis or Marvin McQuitty or Jeff Leslie, all these guys who were playing gospel records, if I didn't sound like them, I was whack. So that was really that was my schooling until, I started kind of hanging out with some friends at school, and they were like, hey, NSYNC, Britney Spears, Tupac, Snoop. And that's when that started. But no bands. It was just church until I started going to junior high school, and that was when I joined the junior high school band, the symphonic band.
So well, I want to get to that too in a second, but I mean, let's go back to the church scene, because many people who are not familiar with the gospel church scene. I mean, the band plays a lot during the service.
Oh yeah.
And how many musicians were in the band?
It varies, man. Sometimes it was just drums and organ, because organ can play bass on the pedals. Right. So it could be just the duo, or sometimes it's it's drums, organ, keyboard, then you have a bass player. So it depends on the church, depends on what's going on in the service, but the bands could vary in size. The band that I played at, where I got the nickname Maestro, was a relatively larger band. Drums, bass, guitar, and percussion they had as well.
Boy, it's kind of interesting when you think about just the influence. I hear you are playing with some musicians, and they're usually pretty decent too. I mean, I've heard some great players in many of the gospel bands that I've witnessed live, and there are some serious players that are playing, as they say, in the service of the Lord. So here they are playing, and great. It was R&B, it was funk, it had elements of pop. It really had a lot of different genres inside that group.
Yes, that's why I always say the church is the best training you could probably get as a musician. Now, you're not going to read anything. Like, no one reads in church. You have to go study that somewhere else.
Yeah.
But as far as your ear training, because you don't even realize the genres that you're playing. To us, especially when you're young and coming up, it's just gospel. It's like, oh, that's just gospel. But then you go to someone else and they hear it and they're like, dude, that's bossa. That's Latin. That's funk, like you mentioned. That's blues. The amount of blues that we play in church is insane. All those kind of 12/8 shuffle grooves. It's all blues stuff. So then when you get on a gig where it is like literally this is a blues gig, they're like, oh man, your feel is phenomenal. Where did you study? It's like, I'm from church, and we did this every week.
And they had rehearsals going on during the week. Is that what it was?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And if you were, if my dad was in charge, because he did praise and worship and led the music ministry as well. He had a rule: if you don't come to rehearsal, you don't play on Sunday.
Hmm.
Even if you may be better than the other guy, or you may know the song a little better, or you've played it more times. No, always a rehearsal. And I can't remember any church I've ever played at where we didn't rehearse before we went live on Sunday.
Wow. Wow. So your dad was kind of old school then, huh?
Oh yeah, man. He didn't play. He did not play, and he told me no several times. As a matter of fact, my dad would kick me off if I wasn't bringing the heat, and he did that once, and I was devastated. I was like, "How can you do that to me?" And he was like, "You ain't ready. When you get ready, you'll be playing."
Those might be hard lessons at the time, but that really is a part of what builds your character and your professionalism in the long run. So it was great of your dad to be able to teach those levels of lessons.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. I'm grateful.
How fantastic! So, were there any bands that you were starting to listen to at that time outside the gospel scene? Was there music, like you said, you got the school now, the school band?
Yeah, I mean, there weren't bands per se. Everybody was listening to artists and pop artists. But I do remember being introduced to Maroon 5.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, back when they had the Songs About Jane record, and that blew me away. I had never heard a band, a rock band at that, playing that way, with the funk and just felt really, really good. So I was like, man, this band is killing. But so I love them. I love Maroon 5. Um, I didn't get into like the Beatles or the Beach Boys until much later, until they were like, obviously until they were finished and done. But um, those were the only ones. And then where I grew up in Southern California, it's a beach town, and it's primarily we were in a town called Santa Clarita, which is primarily Caucasian. So a lot of the people in school were listening to like pop rock and punk. What do they call it? Punk pop was the thing. So like all the Blink 182, anything Travis Barker was gold. And that was an era where that style was really, really big. So Blink 182, Good Charlotte, Sum 41. That was something that people really, really loved. And all the drummers in school, that's how they played. They played like rock stuff. And then here I come playing something I heard on a John P. Key record with Calvin Rogers playing, and they're like, "What is that?" But I started to get more involved, and I loved it, man, because this was stuff that I've never really heard. So now I'm hearing all this different kind of music. I'm hearing heavy guitar, which is not something you hear in gospel very much. So it was great, man. It was a lot of fun just to kind of get involved and learn some new stuff.
So you're being exposed to all different types of music now, and you said you were in the school band, and was it like an orchestra that you were involved with?
Yeah, it was like a wind ensemble. And that was actually where I learned to read. That was 7th grade, because you have to read in an orchestra band. There's no, I come from the school of memorize the music and just play it.
Yeah.
But here comes a teacher with some rudiments and snare music and concert bass drum music, and I'm like, what is this? and I credit her. Her name is Mrs. Cuevas, and I'm still in touch with her. She's my favorite teacher that I ever had. She teaches in New York now. She's still teaching junior high band, but she's in New York. And I credit her for the person who really like introduced notation to me and sat with me and really helped me kind of figure out, the first steps of reading music.
And what this, and you were how old at this time?
This was 7th grade. So however old that is that 13, something like that?
14, around there. So you're in school. So, and you're being exposed now to some obviously some orchestral and some classical music.
Yeah. And I've heard classical music before. Of course, if you watch any sort of TV or movies, you're going to hear a classical score at some point. So it was really cool to kind of be in the moment with them, even in this very, we're not going to sound like what you hear on movies, but we did, I had a really good experience learning that stuff and being involved in that kind of genre. It was very different, but I dug it.
So how important was the school music program for you in your general learning career?
It was very important because that's where it all began. I wouldn't know what a chart is if I didn't go through that program. That gave me an outlet to, really be artistic. And, I was the kind of kid, I would spend a lot of my time in the band room just because I love being around music so much. So that was like the after school hangout was the band room. And, of course people are like, oh, band geek, band nerd. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever. This is, this is really, those same people are now like, oh dude, okay. Like, yeah, man. You remember you called me a band nerd like years ago? But no, it was crucial, man. It was crucial. We did a lot of hanging out in that band room, and that's where it all began, man. So when I hear about music programs now that are being cut or there's no funding for it, it breaks my heart, man. I hate hearing that because that kept a lot of us off the streets, man. A lot of us, we could have been getting into God knows what if we didn't have, that music outlet.
It's kind of interesting in America, which is so profound, the music education program in the school, it has influenced so many great musicians.
Yes.
Learned and the other musicians they played with. And unfortunately, in this last administration, they kind of pulled back a lot of funds from art and education in music. And now I'm hearing this current administration under Biden is looking to now get back into supporting the National Endowment of the Arts and to get that back into action. That'll be exciting to kind of make that all work out. But it's such an important part of the influence of our learning, development.
Yeah, you're right, man. And what's so, I guess, hypocritical when you start taking the funding out of arts and not just music, but, with acting and with, wood shop and all the creative stuff. We celebrate that as adults later in life. We look up to celebrities and actors and we put these people on a pedestal, but yet
you just froze. Now you're back. All right, thanks.
Oh, okay. All right. What did you last hear? What did I say last?
You were saying about how as adults and the importance of the arts as adults.
Oh yeah, because we look up to celebrities who are in the arts, yet we cut the arts out of schools. It's very hypocritical, in my opinion. It's like how can we praise people like, I'm just going to give an example, Tom Hanks or Denzel Washington, and really love what they do, yet say there's no funding for arts in school, so we're just going to cut that out. Yeah, we're not sewing into anybody else. That's not right.
There's a quote that Winston Churchill had said during World War II when he was asked by a reporter, to fund the war, will you be cutting back on any of the funding for the arts? And his comment to that reporter was, then why are we fighting? We're fighting to preserve that level of art and culture. That's what we're going to be giving to the world is our art and our culture. So pulling money back from that is such a dangerous area. And, school music programs are being pulled back and band teachers now are not just teaching one level of school. Now, the same one music teacher has to teach elementary school, junior high school, and high school, the band program, the orchestra program. And if they want to have a jazz ensemble or a marching band, this person is just working their tail off trying to keep it all going. So there are some serious challenges out there.
There are. You are absolutely right, man. And it's tough. Hopefully we can see a brighter day with all of this stuff and we can get things back to some kind of normalcy, especially with things like jazz ensemble, because I did that too, and that was awesome.
And how was that when you mentioned you learned how to read? So now if you're playing in a jazz ensemble, you were probably playing some jazz tunes, some rock tunes. It was probably a variety. Yeah. How'd you learn how to read? Where did the reading part come from?
For me, it was a lot of repetition. And to be completely real and transparent, I joined the jazz band. I was in my junior high school's first jazz band program. And it was a trial run. And it was such a trial run that it wasn't even part of the regular school day. Like we had to rehearse after school. And it was just something the band teacher wanted to, wanted to try. But I was like super down. I'm like, yeah, jazz band, let's go. And she said, okay, cool. And we had a jazz book where we read, but the church boy in me took over. And the book that she gave us, I think I still have it. It's an essential elements book for like junior high jazz. And it's full of charts and everything. But at the back of the book, there's a CD of all the songs. So dumb. I definitely went home and I memorized everything in the book off of the CD. So when we got to rehearsal, we're playing the songs and I'm looking at the chart like I know what I'm doing, but I really just memorized it. And Mrs. Cuevas is like, oh my God, your reading has gotten so, you got all the hits and all the stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, I'm not reading a lick. I memorized every single piece of music on that CD. So it really, and that was a habit, man, that I really, and I hate to admit it, but it's the truth. I did that through high school, man. I was in marching band and I read for that. And we were in the wind ensemble for high school as well. But even in jazz band in high school, dude, like we would get a chart. There was no CD, but if the band director put a piece of music on a music stand and he's like, cool, let's take it from the top, sight reading. Let's just see how we do. Dude, I would kind of fumble my way through it, but I'm really listening to what the horns are doing. So I'm looking at the chart. I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm listening very, very well. He's, we end the song and he says, all right, great. That wasn't too bad. Let's try it again. And I'm like, yes, let's try this again. And we play it again. And now I know the song. So we're doing it. So it really, I didn't start like actually reading until I got to college. And that was Berkeley in Boston.
Yeah. So now you're in school, you're doing your thing. Are you playing with any outside bands now other than church at that time?
For college or for high school?
In high school.
In high school, I was in a couple bands. I was in some pop rock bands that, were really trying to do something. I actually met my wife through one of those bands, which is really cool.
How beautiful.
But yeah, I was in a few. I was in a country band with a friend of mine. And then I had another buddy who wanted to start a pop rock project. And that band had a lot of potential, but we weren't ready. There were too many things happening. But he wanted to do like a Maroon 5, Toby Mac, that kind of vibe. And we were kind of, we were just young. And then the only management that we had for that band were his parents, who were not experienced either. So eventually it just kind of fell apart and we all just kind of went and did our own thing.
But that's kind of how it works out. We go through these different ebb and flow of relationships. That's all a part of the learning experience in what we're doing in the process. So now, graduate high school, you want to go to college. How'd you make the decision to get to Berkeley?
Well, the decision to go to Berkeley was actually major part of it was because of John Blackwell Jr. God rest his soul. He's one of my favorite drummers, especially when he was like at the top of his game. We're talking like early 2000s when he was just getting the Prince gig and he was playing with Patti LaBelle and he was doing things. But he was one of my favorites. And he had a DVD that he put out. I think it was called Showmanship, Grooving, and Technique. Maybe not in that exact order, but that was a DVD. And I got that as a Christmas gift and I completely loved it. And I picked up a lot from John Blackwell, including, some of the twirling that I do. It's kind of a nod to how he did it. But in that DVD, he would say things like, yeah, so when I was at Berkeley, I learned this, that, and the third. Or when I was at Berkeley, I studied with this guy. And I'm like, what is a Berkeley? And I need to be going there because John is amazing. And by the time I got to about 10th grade, I started to really research colleges and I found Berkeley College of Music. And we just kind of started the process. I know you had to audition to get in. You had to read. So I kind of shaped up and I was able to really, get myself together to audition and eventually get in on a scholarship, which was awesome too.
Boy, it's so great when I hear about John. John Blackwell Jr. was a student of mine.
No way.
Absolutely. And I worked with John when he was like 14 years old. He was from South Carolina, and his dad, John Blackwell Sr., would bring him to my clinics the early days. And there was a store called Sims Music that is still down there. And I'll never forget, I did a clinic there back in the early 1980s. And he came by and he sat underneath my hi-hat. Everybody kind of came in. We had about 500 people at the clinic. And he came in and sat right under my hi-hat, right next to my left foot. And just looked up the whole time. And I played the whole time. And we just had a great, great time and fun. And I'm sharing techniques and ideas. And the next event that I was playing was in Atlanta, Georgia. So I, leave, go out to dinner that night. I'm not sure if we flew or if we drove. I'm not sure how far the distance. I don't remember. But we get to Atlanta, and first in line for the Atlanta clinic is John Blackwell and his dad.
That's amazing.
I said, I just saw you guys last night. I said, yeah, no, we're going to follow you to each city that we can. And they came to like 3 or 4 cities in a row. And he sat at that same place underneath my hi-hat. And just, I could just see him taking in so much. We talked about techniques and playing, and we talked about showmanship and playing from your heart. And it was so great. And I went to see him several times with Prince and Patti LaBelle whenever he was in the New York area. He'd have me come by. And I spoke to him several days before he passed away. He had
Did you?
A brain tumor that had affected him when he was in Japan on tour. And he just was able to hear me through from his wonderful wife, Yari. And it was just a great scenario. But it's just so great to hear his name. And that, from his grave, he is still influencing people.
Yes, he is.
And he died on July 4th.
Right.
I thought it was kind of interesting. And also, I got him to take some lessons with the great Jim Chapin. Jim Chapin, who was one of the students of Sanford Moeller, who taught this whipping technique. He sat down with John and showed him this stuff. And John, of course, immediately picked it up, naturally, flawlessly. And Jim Chapin had died on July 4th also.
So that's interesting.
It really is, yeah. And so I when the July 4th comes around and they've got fireworks in the sky, I think of Jim Chapin and John Blackwell Jr. for sure in the celebration of their wonderful lives. And here someone like himself who has influenced you. And just amazing that he went on to play, and just his cymbal set up and how he had, China cymbals in back of him and how he'd play, and just his incredible showmanship. And I kind of showed him also the open-handed playing, which kind of came from Billy Cobham.
Right.
And even though Billy Cobham's a natural right-handed person, Billy played with the left hand on his hi-hat. And Jonathan liked that and saw that. And when I explained it to Jonathan, I said, listen, Jonathan, this might be good to have just to kind of build up your left side. Take some time to work on it. He said, okay. 3 days later, I went to hear him with Patti LaBelle. He played 3/4 of the show open-handed. Afterwards, I said, what, how? I was like stammering. Where'd you get? He said, well, I listened to what you said. I listened to some Cobham, and I just applied it. So it was just amazing to experience that level of musicianship. But the fact that you have been influenced by someone like that, and you watched his DVD, that is powerful, man. It's very, very powerful. It's a name that I want more people to learn from.
Yes, sir. No, he's great, man. And he actually came by Berkeley while I was there. And he was actually doing a jazz festival in town. And I went and caught that. And, of course, he demolished it. And I saw him later in the we call it the 150. That's like the main building at Berkeley where everybody kind of hangs out, and it's kind of the hub where you go to get to individual classes and whatnot. So he was in the 150 just kind of kicking it, and I'm like, yo, is that Blackwell just like sitting there? And he had on his he had just done the Future Sex Love Tour with Timberlake. So he had on his jacket, like his crew jacket, which was fire. And I'm like, that's John Blackwell. So I go up to him and I'm like, yo, John, what's up, man? And he's like, no, I'm just hanging out. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, dude, we're doing a rehearsal. I was in this huge like R&B like band that some students and I had created, and the music was insane. We were playing Michael Jackson, Jill Scott, big old Earth, Wind, and Fire sized band,
Oh,
like just stuffed in a room. And I was like, man, we're doing this rehearsal. Do you want to come by and hang out? I mean, the guys would love to meet you and see you. And he was like, he kind of looked at me and he said, will any girls be there? And I said, yeah, John, there's 2 girls in the band. And he's like, okay, I'll be there. And he showed up, man.
John was a funny guy. Funny. And we have, look at this here, Mark Bennett here. Blackwell. I love being his drum tech. Such a joy watching him play every night. Mark Bennett from Mapex, who is just a phenomenal, incredible instigator in great things in the drumming community.
Yes,
and Mark Terry was doing some drum tech for John, which is so great. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir. What's up, Mark? Love you, man.
Now I got this here. Now I want to ask this here. Now look at this here. We were talking before about education. Rich Fargo, who was a phenomenal, not only drummer but a great inventor. He came up with the flex beaters, which are phenomenal beaters that are being sold, which is has a kind of a flex to the actual bass drum beater.
Oh, really?
Really is a very, very beautiful device. But he said everything is STEM, and we need more art. STEM is science, technology. I think it's engineering and mathematics.
Yeah.
And by adding A in there for the arts, it becomes STEAM. And that's what I do. Many of the schools that I go to, I talk about how trying to bring more of the concept of STEAM to the actual education field. But thank you so much, Rich. Good to hear you. Good to have you here. Check this out here now. This is a gentleman. I want to pull up Carlos. Here's Carlos Gutzman. Carlos Gutzman is a phenomenal drummer in the Miami area, and he's a drum tech also. And he techs for everyone from Jerry Brown to Max Weinberg. Is phenomenal.
Nice.
He said, Stephen, most of the church drum setups that he's worked on have been enclosed in plexiglass booths.
Yeah.
To contain the volume and control the sound for the engineer out front. Can you give any tips to drummers that play in church that will help them, with some of these ideas?
With some of the ideas of plexiglass?
Okay, well, let me see. Can you give any tips to drummers that play in church bands that will help them adjust to that environment when they're first thrust into the hot seat?
Yeah. Let me first, Carlos, what's up, man? Thanks for the comment. Appreciate that. When I started playing in church, we didn't have any plexiglass. I feel like that's kind of a new thing. That's become kind of standard in the church world.
Yeah.
But I do remember when it kind of transitioned from, okay, everybody's kind of out to actually drums are kind of loud. Let's put you, let's enclose you. For me, it wasn't too bad. But I would highly recommend some sort of either a headphone or an in-ear monitor to really kind of help with that. When I first started, I didn't have either. I just had a wedge. But the issue with the wedge was usually the drums would overpower the wedge because you're playing drums and all of your sound hits the shield and flies right back to you. So for me, the drums were always super loud in the shield. So if you can get any sort of in-ear monitor or headphones just to make sure you're still in the mix and it's still balanced and sounds good to you, you'll be good. And it's not too bad. Get some lights in there because it can get a little dark, and a fan because you're enclosed, you're all that heat is just building up inside the booth. So with those, you should be okay. I know a lot of drummers don't like being in the enclosed booth, but that's just the world we're in right now, and it's you kind of have to pick your battles. We can take the shield away, but then you need to cut your volume down by 50 or 60%, which may not be very fun. Or you can play like you want to, and we have control of the volume. So I want the experience. I want to play like I want to play. So cool, throw me in a box and just make sure I have a headphone extension cord so I can plug in and still be on one accord with the rest of the guys.
Well, great point. Thank you, Carlos, so much. Great question. It's kind of interesting that the plexiglass, and you can get these even if you, at your home, you can buy these things and put them in your home to contain some of the sound,
Sure can.
And the key thing is to give you the freedom to dig in and drive the band, but not be so overbearing, especially if you've got some vocalists up front where you've got the drums bleed into the vocal mics. I mean, this really kind of helps to isolate and separate our sound. Listen, we play the drums. We hold wood in our hands, we strike metal and plastic, and we make noise.
Yeah.
We get paid when we organize the noise. That's kind of what we do. So we got to hit things in what's happening. It's just kind of part of the process.
Great point.
Talk about your home studio. Just talk about your drums in the back. You got Armory back there, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I sure do. Let me see if I can move this around. Kind of see it. Yeah, that's an Armory kit. That is a custom wrap that Mark Bennett and Chris down at the Mapex factory they kind of hooked up for me for some content that I'll be releasing very soon, actually. But yeah, the Armory kits are phenomenal. I play them regularly, especially when I'm home and I'm doing either studio sessions or I'm out doing pre-COVID, but if I was out gigging and I needed to bring my kit, it was always, my Armory kit. Yeah. And those drums are amazing, man. It's a birch maple kind of hybrid shell, and those are my favorite woods on a kit. So it just makes sense, man. And of course, I play the Saturns as well. And when I'm out, doing, like big shows and television, they usually get me a Saturn kit, which is awesome. Those sound phenomenal as well. But man, the Armories have a very special place in my heart. That's why I play them so much.
Boy, it's and you've got some video on the Mapex YouTube channel.
Yeah,
that's got you playing and demonstrating the Armory, and it's got some new ones that are going to be coming out soon. Some videos that are going to be posted really, really soon. So
yes, sir. One is out now.
Yeah, one's out right now. Yeah, I think the 2019 one is out now. Is that the one that's out now?
No, the brand new one. There's a new one that just dropped like 2 days ago.
Oh, okay. Well, then I want everyone to go to the Mapex YouTube channel and check it out. You're going to hear some great playing on some great sounding drum kits.
Absolutely. And there's more stuff we're doing too with the Armory kit that you guys will want to check out. But those drums are they do everything we need them to do. That's why I play them so much. You want the punch, you want the clarity, you want the projection. The Armory kits have that. I play it.
It's pretty powerful. Well, listen, the whole Mapex family of drums and what they do, from even the design, the design lab. I mean, it's just to the Saturns, to the Armories. They've got this great product at great price points. They all sound great. The hardware is fantastic. I mean, it really is kind of amazing to see a company that has given us a great product at a very affordable price.
Yes, and that's something that I push, especially with the Armory kit. Like, you don't need to spend if you don't want to. Now, of course, we can all. If you give me $20,000 on a drum budget, I'm gonna go ham. Like, but if you don't have to spend that, and if that's not in your budget, you can definitely get a very, very, very dope kit for under $1,000. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is, again, typical Mapex, that they think about that and they design their products with that in mind.
Yes.
In the process. Now you have your drums all mic'd up. Just talk about your setup there. You have it all mic'd up, and you record. You use Logic Pro. Is that what you use?
Yes, sir. Everything is mic'd up. I'm trying to see if I can. Let me see if I can get out of the way. Can't really see it that well, but in between the towels here, I have my interface. My laptop that I'm on now, I put that on top of the top towel here.
Yeah.
And I record everything through the interface. The mics are going to the interface. The interface goes straight to the laptop, and that's how I record everything. And I do my recordings here. I do my content, my videos here. People have actually asked me, where do I shoot my videos? And they think I'm in a studio somewhere. Y'all, I'm in my house. This is the bonus room in our house that we purchased a couple years ago, and I love it. This is literally just the bonus room, but there are some really cool things you can do with lighting and cameras if you know what you're doing. So I do everything in here. I actually share this room with our washer and dryer. Like, that's how much of a bonus room this is. Definitely bonus room turned studio. But this is where I do everything, and I shoot my videos here. I do my content here, and although the Mapex thing we just did was at Mapex, that was at the headquarters in out here in Tennessee. Yeah. But yeah, man, this is the spot. I'm at my desk where I have my monitors set up. I have a desk here with my MIDI controller and a couple other interfaces. I have Let me see if I can show you guys this. I have my, you can kind of see it. I got my vinyl, got my record player with another set of speakers there. Been really into records lately, and this is one of my new favorites. This is Toto.
Whew, that is Jeff Porcaro at his best.
Dude, I love this record. And the first track, it's called Child's Anthem, and there's no lyrics, there's no singing. It's just the band just grooving on this thing, and it just sounds amazing. So I've been into vinyl too.
What year was that album?
Oh man,
Let's
see. This is 1978.
70, I was going to say 78. I met Jeff in 1977 when I moved to California.
You met Jeff?
Oh yeah, I knew Jeff. Jeff was
man,
a dear person and of course a phenomenal player, and all the seeing the development of Toto and what they did, and it was just and then of course all the other bands that he would play with, to go on to record. I mean, it was everybody from Boz Scaggs to Michael Jackson, you name it. He was just focused on that session scene when the session scene was at its peak in what they were doing.
Yeah, dude.
And
one of my favorites.
That's great that you can listen to it, especially on the vinyl, man. There's a certain sound and feel that vinyl gives that just gets under your skin and just gives you goosebumps.
Dude, that's why I love it. That's why I love it, man. And Jeff is one of my favorites as well. And he has a thing. He has some videos that are out on YouTube where he's playing like a 16th note groove, like just kick, snare, hat. Dude, that groove has influenced me so much. Like he just had this vibe and this flow when he did the it's so good. It's so good. There's some stuff. If anybody's into Jeff Porcaro, go check him out. He has some old clinics he did at like Musicians Institute way back in the day. Definitely some nuggets in there. Definitely.
Boy, that's fantastic. So you get out of Berkeley now. You're out of Berkeley. You go there. So how'd you start hooking up with certain bands? How'd you hook up with Selma Gomez and some of these bands that you were starting to work with? How did that all come in?
Yeah, well, remember, like I said earlier, pop was really the avenue I wanted to go down. So I really started to surround myself with people who were either doing it or wanted to do it. And I just kind of basically started from scratch, man. When I finished at Berkeley, came back to LA and just started gigging, man. Just started connecting with people who I thought were either great musicians or destined to be something really, really cool. And it just kind of went up the ladder. My very first pop gig was with David Archuleta from American Idol. And how I got that gig, I was playing in a fusion band in LA. And I go over this in my next episode of Maestro Methods, how I got that gig and how little small gigs, usually pave the way for the really big ones. Yeah. But I was playing in this band and I loved it. It was really awesome. Music was fun. Of course, there's no jazz scene in LA, so it was really just for us. Yeah. And but we put out a promotional video that the David Archuleta camp caught wind of. And they wanted to audition the bass player. His name is Ben Shepard. He's fantastic. One of my favorite bass players ever. They wanted to audition him to do these David Archuleta tours that they had coming up. And they said, do you have any footage? And Ben was like, oh, dude, well, we just did this amazing video recording with my band, my fusion band. This is the best stuff that I got. So check it out. So they saw the video and they were like, okay, yeah, Ben, you sound great. But who's this other dude? Who's playing drums? And he was like, oh, that's Steven. He's playing in the band. He's great. So I ended up getting an audition via Ben's invitation. Oh. They loved that. They loved what we were doing, loved our chemistry. They auditioned us, and we ended up getting the gig, man. So from that one, and I always say all you really need is one. And once you're introduced into the pop realm, now you have developed trust. People know that you can do the job. They know you can play to a click. They know you can lead the band. They know you can handle yourself on the road because you've been doing it. Yeah. And then you just start meeting different people within the game, and then you just start kind of going up. And that's how the Selena Gomez gig came about. You stay in the game, you stay in your lane, you connect with the right people, and you just never know. You never know what gig will lead you to the next one. So every gig I did after David Archuleta, like, man, I was on it. There was no messing around. If I had to read it we're reading, and there's no fake reading anymore. Like we really we're really doing it. Because there were some gigs, man. I did some cabaret stuff where I really had to read like 9 pages of stuff, and reading it. And one of those gigs, Ricky Minor came to the show, who's a huge music director in the LA area. He MD'd for American Idol at its peak. He did that for years. He did the Tonight Show. I mean, he's like the MD of all MDs. And, oh yeah, he came up to me after the show, and I was like, Ricky's, and we had met before, so it was good to see him. But I was glad he saw me reading, and he was like, man, you're reading your ass off up there. And I was like, yes, I am. I finally am. He was like, you sound great, man. I was like, dude. And, he plays, Teddy Campbell is his main guy, who's been one of my biggest influences since I was a little kid. So to get that compliment from him meant everything. And I was like, that's why gigs you play, no matter how small, you got to be on it, because you never know who's up in this audience watching you.
Well, that's such a great point. You never know who's out there. You never know where the next contact will come in from. But there are certain qualities you have to have, which you obviously have, Stephen. You're personable. You show up on time. You know how to handle the gig to be a professional. Talk about that. What qualities do you need to really be aware of?
Just those, those for sure. Being on time, man, and really, it's the small gigs that really test your ability to do that. If we're just doing a kind of a rinky-dink club gig, there's 3 songs and the pay is $50. You got to bring, the right work ethic, as if this gig is paying you $6,000 and it's 1 song. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really need to you can't discriminate with jobs. And that was something that I learned early on, because I would see other musicians who would do that, and they would wonder why they wouldn't get the call for the big gig later.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you can't be up there just doing whatever, because it doesn't pay you what you want. This is really where the test takes place, because these same music directors who you're working with for the small gigs, they know the big MDs too. Usually they're friends or they're neighbors or they went to college together. Like, you never know. So when your name comes up, for Beyonce or Selena Gomez or Lil Nas X or whatever, they're going to say, oh, how was Joe, who played your gig last week? Is he any good? Can I audition him? And then that MD will say yay or nay, depending on what's going on. So I didn't want to leave any room for that ever. Like, I wanted every MD I worked with to speak highly, to enjoy me, and to want to work with me again, call me back. And that's really how it goes. But yeah, man, the simple things, being on time, learn the music. If they give you something to learn and say, we have rehearsal on this day, you better have it down. Come on. And being on time does not mean showing up at the time the gig is. Like, if the gig is at 8 p.m. and you're playing drums and you got to set up, dog, you got to be there at 6:30 even, to make sure you can find parking, make sure you know what's going on with the setup and where you need to be. Like, just leave room so that you can be pro all the way throughout the gig. And if that is your attitude for everything you do, you'll be on big stuff.
Well, great. This is great advice. I want everyone to really kind of heed these words, because this is really where the rubber hits the road, man. Where also you start to make some traction and people start recognizing your name. And then, of course, when you show up on time and you have all those qualities, when you sit down to play, you have to play your tail off and give them 110%.
Yes, but lead the band. And a lot of guys think, in order to qualify for a pop gig like a Gomez or Justin Bieber or Justin Timberlake, I need to have all the chops and I need to just chop my way through every song, which is so incorrect, y'all. As a matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. They're looking at how much pocket can you play, because we have dancers and they can't play on top of your chop, or they can't dance with you doing all that crazy stuff. How can you lock in? And the guitar player for Selena Gomez, he paid me a awesome compliment, man. And it had nothing to do with my chops or my licks, but he pulled me aside one day and he was like, "You know what I love about your playing, man?" And I said, "What?" And he was like, "You bury the click." And I was like, really? He's like, you bury the click. So I don't need to have a bunch of click in my mix because you're on it. Like
Yeah.
you're the backbone of this group, man. And I love that. And to me, at that level of a gig, that was just, I'll never forget that. That was such a big thing for me.
That's a great compliment. That was the compliment that we always used to say about Jeff Porcaro.
See?
You're in some deep company with that one for sure, Stephen. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Talk about the Lil Nas X gig when you were in Nashville and you did that gig. That was a huge gig.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man. And this goes back to just being on your game for all the gigs that you do, because you just never know. When we were touring with David Archuleta, the guitar player who played with us, his name is Asaf Rode. He's Egyptian, but very, very cool dude. And he was brand new to the States when we did the David gig. So he was, very, very new, just kind of breaking his way in. But Asaf really did his thing and played the game very well. And he became the music director for Lil Nas X. So our relationship goes way back to 2011. Wow. And when Lil Nas was doing the CMA Fest, that shot here in Nashville, we recorded that at Nissan Stadium. With Billy Ray Cyrus and
huge crowd.
Huge gig. He called me and said, "Hey man, are you still in Nashville?" And I said, yeah, I'm here. And he's like, and he downplayed this gig so much, man. Like he was like, I'm doing this thing, and he had already got the Lil Nas situation. He had already been MDing him, for a little while. And he said, "Man, we're doing this thing. It's Lil Nas. I think Billy Ray is involved." And he's like, "It may be televised. I don't know. But do you want to play this thing? I think it's for CMA." He was really just trying to make this gig sound as small as humanly possible. And I was like, "Yo, Lil Nas is cool, man. Of course, I love to do it." I didn't know what it was. There was no advertisement for what this thing was, because the Lil Nas X performance was a surprise. That wasn't something that they had planned, especially for the live audience that was there. But we get to rehearsal, and then when I get to rehearsal, that's when I figure out, oh shoot, this is for CMA Fest. Like, are we playing at like a club or a bar, like on Broadway? And they're like, no, like this is at the stadium right after Billy Ray does his set. He's gonna come back on, and they're gonna bust out Old Town Road, introduce Lil Nas X, and man, it was so fire. It was so much fun. And yeah, man, we had a great time, but a lot of the same qualities that you needed to have on a small gig, that whole song was to a click, all of it. Dynamics and playing to the song and not chopping over verses and all that good stuff. But the relationship was probably one of the most important factors in that gig, because me and Asaf were good friends from back in the day, and we kept a healthy working relationship, so that when he got a really big gig like that, he was able to call me to join him on that.
How fantastic. This is all about relationship. People who and people that want to work with people that they like.
Bingo.
And not just, they have to like your playing, and they have to kind of like you as a person, man. They've got to want to have you next to them.
That is so important, man. And I say that to everybody whoever says, "Hey, man, I want to do a tour like the ones you do." And I say, well, cool. I mean, make sure your playing is on point. But really, though, the actual performance of the touring show, that's only 2 hours out of your day. Like that's really the what's that?
That's so important to understand. It's only 2 hours. The rest of the time, you're together like a family.
That's the tour.
Yeah.
Like the other 23 hours of the day, that is the actual, we're going on tour, which means we're going to be spending time on a bus in close quarters with each other. So you need to be able to blend with different personalities, and be friends with everybody. Don't make any enemies. Because nobody wants that. Like you said, they want to work with their friends, people who they're cool with. And if we have a really cool bonding moment on the bus, the show is going to be ridiculous.
Boy, that's so great. You know, you're involved with some producing, you're involved with some songwriting, so you've got a variety of other things that you're doing to keep your inspiration going along the way. And now because of COVID and the pandemic that we're in, there's probably a little extra time now that you can focus on more songwriting and producing other people's product and playing for other people's recordings. So, you know, you're keeping busy on a wide variety of things that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to, man. I don't like to put all of my eggs in one bucket. Because pandemics happen. This whole pandemic, man, hit the touring world really, really hard. And I'm sure, you know, I'm one of many people who had plans for 2020 and had travel dates in place, and you know, and all that stuff just kind of got scrapped. And you know, a lot of those gigs, you know, we're not on any sort of retainer. You know, that's kind of an old school mentality. So you usually kind of get paid by the gig. So if the gigs don't happen, guess who's not getting a check?
Yeah, that's right.
So you need to keep an open mind with income, and if you're a musician, more than likely you can do other things as well in the same art form. So production, songwriting, get involved in that stuff, and that's what I've been doing. And it's been really, really cool, man. I've been able to connect with a lot of really cool artists and make songs for them and produce, and because people still need music. Music isn't dead. Just the way in which we do it has to be adjusted.
Well said. And we adjust to it, and we face the challenges that are in front of us. And within those changes, we still can survive. And it's all going to come back. When it comes back, we'll get back into our routine, and it's all going to be, you know, kind of the way it was, if not even better, because I think people are going to really appreciate live music now even more because of not having it for so long.
Exactly. So be ready.
You know, I want people to understand your Maestro method that you have on your YouTube channel. I want them to make sure you go there and check it out, and to be in touch with you on Instagram, same thing, Stephen Maestro Robinson. And I want them to, you know, contact you. And if anybody's interested in any kind of consultation or any kind of lessons, whatever it is, I want them to contact you, and you'll make the time to guide them along the way. We've got some great questions of people that have touched the base. Jeff Towers joined us, and so Jim Royal joined us from Connecticut, and there's so many people have kind of popped along the way from Vegas to all around the nation. So you've got some good people here that have joined us on. This will actually, once it's live now on Facebook, this will go on to YouTube, onto the Mapex YouTube channel. So I want everyone to kind of go back there and they can watch it again. Boy, Stephen, you've been fantastic, man. What a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. All mine. I'm going through these comments as well, man. This is good stuff, man.
Yeah, man. Some great stuff. Well, I want to thank you so much on behalf of Mapex All Access for joining me and having some time. And it's just so great to know you. And any way I can help you out, you know, I'm a phone call away. And of course, I want to thank the people like Mark Bennett and Jeff Mulvihill and all these great people at Mapex who are just, you know, phenomenal people.
Jeff is the one who signed me to Mapex, man.
Oh man, Jeff is another phenomenal. You know, I interviewed him, and he's such a funny guy, and another great musician himself.
Yeah,
you know, he's doing too for sure. So Mapex has some really great people, you know, in the backstage that are just, you know, kind of helping move this agenda forward. And it's great to have you along the way. Let's keep in touch. I wish you a happy and healthy New Year. Thank you so much again.
Yes, sir.
Everyone, check it out on his YouTube channel, Instagram. Go have some fun. Thank you so much, Stephen. Great to meet you.
Thank you, sir. Love y'all.